All right, I think we can probably get started now. Good afternoon. I'm Philip Wu with the City of Pittsburgh Department of City Planning, and I will be moderating this development activities meeting on behalf of the Oakland Business Improvement District and the Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. We have two projects that will be presented during this meeting. The first is for the proposed demolition of 3 townhomes located at 107 to 111 Halket Street. And then the second for special exception requests to use part of the building at 3342 Fifth Avenue for educational use. Both properties are owned by Walnut Capital, who is here and will be presenting. Before we get into the presentation, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items related to participating in this Zoom meeting. First, if anyone has any technical issues or needs any assistance, please use the chat feature to ask for help. If folks have questions or comments for the presenters tonight, please use the Q&A tool to type out your question or comment. Or if you would like your questions to be read out loud, you can tap the raise hand button. Or if you're calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand, and I will announce the last 4 digits of your phone number when we're ready to unmute you. And for our presenters tonight, we ask that you try your best to describe what's on slides that you're presenting to assist folks who may be on audio only or who aren't in front of their computers. And lastly, we are recording this meeting for OPDC and OBID to post online later if desired. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Derek Dauphin, the city's neighborhood planner for the Oakland neighborhood, who will briefly discuss the Registered Community Organization Program and next steps for the applicant after this meeting.
All right, thank you, Phil. So as Phil noted, my name is Derek Dauphin. I'm the neighborhood planner for Oakland and the project manager for the Oakland plan process. For those who are less familiar with these kinds of meetings, development activities meetings were established through the Registered Community Organization Program that we administer here at City Planning. The idea behind the program was relatively simple in that community organizations could meet certain requirements around transparency and process and be certified by the city, and then that would integrate them into a part of the development review process, and that they would become hosts of a required community meeting for the project. And not all projects hit the trigger for that. There's a number of different triggers in our code around this program that send certain projects to a development activities meeting or DAM. But once you're at that meeting, the intent really is to have a meeting where the applicants can present their project to the community before it's permitted, so that you can, as the community, you can ask questions and get information directly from the project team. Next slide, please. One thing that's a little unique about this meeting is that because there are 2 RCOs for this part of Oakland, that City Planning is hosting the meeting. Other than Phil sort of managing the Zoom, my role is really to create a report from this meeting. It is a pretty standard report where I record what was presented by the applicants, and then also what questions were asked and what answers were given. The purpose of that is just to have a neutral telling. It is a neutral report, so I try to keep as close to explicitly what's said as possible. And then we provide that report to the Board of Commission that's going to have its first hearing on the project, so they get that from us. I think the important thing to highlight there is that my report is truly neutral, so I do not try to make any recommendation or any judgment about what the community input was or how the community felt overall about a project. So I try to tell it as neutrally as possible with no recommendations and no sort of decisions in there. So if you do feel strongly about a project, we do still recommend that you take it upon yourself to testify at the Board or Commission that the project is going before at its hearing. Next slide. So one special note here, a couple special notes here, is that this, as many probably know, and I noted at the beginning, there is an active neighborhood planning process underway in Oakland. It is not an adopted plan, and any potential zoning code amendments have not been adopted yet, so they're not sort of fixed policy and zoning code requirements yet. But one of the things that the steering committee approved as a part of the planning process already is a short list of goals for development projects to address, particularly on the major corridors. And in this case, the 5th and Forbes corridor is sort of relevant. And so we provide these to the applicants. I'm highlighting them here. And nearly all the community organizations in Oakland are on the steering committee that created those. And so the intent is that we're all sort of reviewing these as a part of project review, our different parts of the project review. I've already covered that there's 2 RCOs. And the last thing I'll say related to that is that we do always offer up a chance for both of the RCOs to speak to any background on the project or any engagement they've had with the applicant. And so without further ado, I'll hand it over to, let's start with Georgia at OBID.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, team. Good evening, everyone. I'm Georgia Metropolis, the Executive Director of the Oakland Business Improvement District. This page here highlights who we are. We are one of 2 business improvement districts or place management organization in Pittsburgh. We represent a diverse group of decision makers, including property and business owners, universities, hospitals, city government, community and cultural nonprofits. We are supported in part by these business and property owner stakeholders, including our university and medical partners, Carlow University, UPMC, McGee-Wemyss Hospital of UPMC, and the University of Pittsburgh. Last year, our board completed a strategic and organizational strategic plan, and they revised their vision and mission. Our vision is to set the standard for growth and innovation. Our mission is to ensure Oakland's place as Pennsylvania's global center. And they developed the first values statement for the organization, described as to reframe the experience of commercial, retail, office, and residential environments while dismantling oppression, embracing diversity, promoting diverse business, and creating spaces for social, racial, and economic justice. So regarding engagement, we did have representatives from Walnut Capital did approach myself. So Todd Reedberg, who was on this call today, did approach me. We did have a meeting, a virtual Zoom meeting, to discuss both of the proposed projects. I will note that Todd is represented on the OBID board of directors. And so he was able to be present at the board meeting that took place in July. And he did present the project to our board. We have a 30-member board, very diverse group. So that was the first presentation that came through. We reached out to Todd and team from Walnut Capital, and Greg, thank you, Greg Perlman's on the call today as well, to provide us information, detail, renderings, items that we could share not only with the board, but also with the stakeholders throughout the Central Oakland District. And we do that through an e-newsletter, website, email, any format opportunity we can to stay connected. We did have a stakeholder reach out to me who was concerned about the Halket Street barriers that currently are there surrounding the vacant site, of which Walnut Capital is going to be talking about today for their special exception change on 5th Avenue. That was Oriente Shuley. He's both the property owner and the owner of the Shuley's Pizza business. They were very concerned that since there was no construction happening and there would be no need to have the barriers and therefore blocking a lane on Halket Street. So the Walnut Capital team, along with University of Pittsburgh team and the city, we are working to have those barriers removed in response and to bring the street back to parking meters, and possibly we hope to see a loading zone as well. But that was an issue that was raised, and the team did respond to that. We actually met in person. In addition to that, we had discussions with that said property owner regarding the demolition, since that is immediately behind their building and their business. They did approve, they do support the demolition, and they also reached out and did receive word from Kirkpeck Management that owns the property and parking lot on the corner of Forbes and Halket, who also supported the demolition. I know that the team will discuss more today about the temporary plans for that project, but stakeholders, both stakeholders, adjacent neighbor stakeholders, were excited to hear that the buildings would come down, but then there would be an opportunity possibly for a temporary space, maybe outdoor seating, amenities that would be supportive of the commercial district and the community. And again, as we noted, we did share the flyer, the DAM flyer that the city created through our various means and communications streams. I will also note, as speaking as the Oakland Business Improvement District, our board of directors do support both the University of Pittsburgh and Walnut Capital on their efforts here today.
Thank you, Georgia. And now we have Wanda Wilson from the Oakland Planning and Development Corporation.
Good evening, everyone. OPDC's mission is to build a better Oakland and help neighbors thrive. We have a variety of programs to serve the broader Oakland community, including affordable housing, community organizing, community planning, youth mentoring, workforce development, financial coaching. Next slide, please. The engagement on this site that is being talked about, we did an extensive community engagement process in 2019 related to the development proposal, which is listed here. We provided testimony at both Zoning Board and Planning Commission. We actually have a community benefits agreement in place regarding the impact of the project and how it can generate benefits to help affordable housing, mitigate transportation issues, and provide a community-oriented retail space. We've had no engagement about the Halket Street houses, so this is the first engagement about that. For both projects, we have project pages on our website, so members of the community can find a lot of information at opdc.org on the Design Development Review section of our website.
All right, thank you, Wanda. And looks like Jonathan had his hand up earlier. Jonathan, would you like to speak?
Yeah, well, no, I was just letting you know I'm ready to present when
you're
ready for me.
Yeah, we're ready if you'd like to share your screen.
Sure. I think, George, I'm going to need help from you on that.
We do have the slides as well.
All right, so why don't you go ahead and do that? Okay. That may be easier. Perfect. Okay, so this is the first slide that depicts the overall site area. The area that we're talking about, at least on this one, is the area that is in green. And that shows the outline of the townhouses on Halket Street that we're looking to demolish. We don't have any plans for the site right now, but similar to what we were doing with our prior demolition activity over on Bates Street, we believe that the site, the best use of these buildings is to be demolished. So we would demolish them, seed them, and leave it as green space until we figured out what we actually were interested in doing on the site. As you may be aware, these townhomes were acquired by my client, Walnut, several years ago, and for the most part have sat vacant. In the Oakland Public Realm District, we're required to go through Planning Commission for any demolition that happens, which is why we're here. I would just note that to the extent we look to do anything in the future on this, we would be coming back through the community process, which includes development activities meetings, and also through Planning Commission as well again. So not a whole lot to talk about. If you want to just advance to the next slide. This is just a survey that we have of the site. And again, there are 3 homes on it, and we would be looking to take all of those down. Happy to answer any questions that anybody may have at this point.
Do we have any questions from either of the RCOs about the projects?
This is Georgia from OBID. Nothing at this time. I'll wait to hear others ask questions.
No, I don't have anything at this time.
Great, we can move to the next one.
Jonathan, did you want me to put up the the Word document with the?
Yeah, that's fine. Or if you want, I can try. If you have it, that would be great, Philip. It's.
Okay. I'll go ahead and put it up.
Great. Perfect. So our second request this evening is for 3342 Fifth Avenue. As Wanda said during the discussion before, we went ahead and looked at this site extensively through a community process back in 2018 and 2019, and actually entered into a community benefits agreement with OPDC with regard to the use of the site. We went ahead and got approval back in May 9th of 2019 for the site from the zoning board. That approved essentially 152 feet in height, an 8-to-1 FAR, parking of 100 spaces, and approved an office use with the first floor retail. The zoning board decision also approved a community benefits agreement. After we went through that process at zoning board, we proceeded to go through planning commission and to obtain site plan approval and other approvals associated with the construction. We got those shortly after our zoning board decision came through, and then a building permit has issued, and I'm sure, as all of you know, construction has started, demolition has progressed, and we're working on the site similar to what Georgia talked about before with the barriers. Just to be clear from the outset, there are no physical changes that we're talking to go ahead about performing to the approved plan. The reason for our request this evening is section 90803D3A of the zoning code outline. I should say, if you want to slide up a little bit, Philip. The other way, I'm sorry. So I would just note before we get to our specific request that the Oakland Public Realms section of the zoning code does talk about the purpose of this district being a district where there's an intensive concentration of mixed use that includes office, retail, housing, institutional, classrooms, and student housing of all types. And that the other purpose of the district is, again, to encourage continual retail business frontage at street and pedestrian levels with retail, office, classrooms, institutional, and residential uses as the primary uses of the upper stories of the building. So first, I did want to note that at least in terms of the purpose of this district, it does envision true mixed use, which is what we're talking about this evening. Section 90803D3E provides that the use exceptions or the special exceptions within the district are the same as within the urban neighborhood commercial or UNC district, which is listed in the use table that's referenced there. Do you want to slide down to the next page, Phil? Thank you. So within that district, educational classroom space is permitted as a special exception. What that essentially means is that if you meet the standards set forth in the relevant section of the ordinance, which in this case is 911-04A21, we're entitled to the use. So we went ahead and took a look at these sections as they apply to our educational classroom space. And if you can see, I've inserted the standards and then gone ahead and put our response in red. And specifically, the 4 standards are: 1, the design of the structure shall follow the district's development standards for commercial uses. And again, we're not contemplating any change from the previous approval. Section 2 is the height and bulk of the proposed structure shall be designed as to minimize the blocking of views from the adjacent residential properties. Again, no change whatsoever from the previous approval. 3 is access to the facility shall be addressed in a manner which emphasizes the use of public transit to the facility and clearly meets the peak demands of the facility in a manner which does not require the use of parking spaces on residential streets. Again, no change from the previous approval. And the fourth is that the approving body, in this case, it would be zoning board, should determine that there aren't detrimental impacts on surrounding properties, taking into account traffic generation, physical relationship of the structure to proposed uses, hours of operation, impacts on parking, and the size of the building. Again, no change from the previous approval, so there's no impacts associated with this. Essentially, what we wanted to do with this application was to allow for the academic classrooms or educational use to be used in part of the building. We do not know right now how much of the building is going to be educational or classroom use, but because of the way the uses are set forth in this district, we wanted to be really careful to make sure that we had our full options available to us. As I said, there's no change to the building. There is a lot of square footage there, so likely it will continue to be something that is mixed use. But as far as what we're looking for this evening is just to allow this use. I did see a couple questions pop up in the chat. Philip, if you don't mind, I'm happy to address those right now. Or if you want, if you want to have questions first come from the RCOs, and I can address those subsequently.
Yeah, we actually do have a question from Andrea Boykowitz from OPDC. Does Walnut Capital have a time frame for how long they anticipate leaving the Halket site vacant? I think that was probably the townhouse.
Right, and the answer is no. There's no anticipated development at this point. But you know, I'm not saying the vacancy will be perpetual, but right now, I don't think we have an anticipated time frame.
And Andrea, it looks like you had your hand up. Did you have another question you would like to ask out loud?
I'm so sorry, that was an accident.
Okay.
I did see some questions on the current project, Philip, so I'm happy to address those as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just read them off.
Sure.
First one is about the 15-foot ceilings. Are there going to be 15-foot ceilings for classrooms?
I don't know that there are any changes planned to the building, so I think whatever was there before would probably continue to exist.
And follow-up question, will multiple class cycles generate any extra traffic?
I think the actual traffic generated by having the academic use there will be less. These are students who are generally on campus or would otherwise be on campus, so I don't think that there'll be any additional traffic. I actually think the impacts will be less.
And we also had another question about the 3342 building. This is from Millie. So does this mean that the building will look just like previous Walnut Capital plans with the big blue peak? And won't there be evening classes that will affect street traffic?
Right, so the building is planned to look exactly as it looked before. So there's no changes to that approved design. And again, as far as the evening classes, I don't know what the schedule is, but the building was always planned to be a 24/7 operation, and that those were available. And my same answer before goes to what we were talking about a little bit with traffic, which is if you're dealing with academic use, those are generally people who are, for one reason or another, on campus. So we don't think there'll be any impacts. In fact, we think there'll be less.
We also have a question about the commuting patterns. What study has been done to show that no commuting students will take classes here?
I don't think there have been any studies done with respect to that, nor do I think any are required. I think the issue is really just going to be is this use permitted within this building? And so long as we meet the criteria, it is. So I think that's all we're talking about at this point. I don't know that programming's been done or anything else has been done to figure that out. We're just at this point asking for permission for the use.
And we just have one question left in the Q&A. Is there an agreement for the 3 row houses to be sold to Pitt?
So there is not.
We also had another question pop up. I seem to recall that most of Pitt classes are night classes. Did anybody look at that?
So again, we're here for the use. I don't know that that's true or not true, but again, ultimately how it gets programmed would be a decision that would be made by the university at the time that they decided to figure out what would be used for educational class purposes.
We have a hand raised from Elena Zaitzoff. I'll unmute you.
Hi, I just want to go back to the row houses. I need to register that any loss of single family homes, which is how they are zoned in Oakland, is a tremendous blow. I really don't understand why Walnut Capital bought them to begin with, unless it was so that the neighbor across the street didn't complain about the tower going up across the street. But yeah, I'm just curious about the end game as well. But disappointed that we're losing some single family homes. Always not a good sign in Oakland. And of course, that's all.
Does anyone from Walnut Capital want to address that comment?
I don't think that it was a question, but you know, I certainly understand where Elena's coming from.
We have one question in the Q&A. Doesn't the special exception still require not causing any harm? How does traffic issues not require at least some analysis?
So the special exception criteria would be based on, if you look at the specific criteria that are set up in the code, this may be too legal of an answer. Those criteria are all that we're required to show that we meet, and with no physical changes being made to the structure whatsoever, we meet those criteria.
All right. Do we have any more questions from folks, from the RCOs, from attendees? Looks like had a question. You said houses have not been sold. Have there been discussions to do so?
We're not going to comment on any discussions that we have. I think that's definitely beyond the purview of the meeting. So the answer is I'm not going to talk about any discussions.
I think it would be good to discuss the approval process and the dates for zoning board and that sort of thing, so people are aware.
So we don't have dates yet for the zoning board. I expect that we'll have those dates in the next probably 2 weeks in terms of the scheduling, not the hearing itself. And when we do get those dates, we'll make sure that we give that information to both RCOs so that they can publish them appropriately. And I know the city does a really good job of publishing those on the website, but we don't have dates yet.
And that goes for the planning commission as well?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't be required to go to the planning commission on this, I don't believe.
Well,
just
for the townhomes.
Oh, yes, actually, I don't believe we have a date for the planning commission yet either. That's correct. Sorry,
Okay.
Phil. But same answer, we're happy. As soon as we get those, we'll let everybody know and get them published.
All right. Any other questions from folks?
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'd like to thank Walnut Capital for their presentation and for everyone who attended, and to OPID and OPDC. If folks have questions or actually comments rather about either of the development proposals for the townhomes at 107 to 111 Halket Street, you can email the Planning Commission at planningcommission@pittsburghpa.gov, or for the special exception related to the 3342 Fifth Avenue project, you can email the Zoning Board of Adjustment at zoningboard@pittsburghpa.gov. And if there are no further questions, we'd like to thank everyone for their attendance, and we hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Derek. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.